Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another mini episode of Fluently Forward. Today, we're going to be talking about some tragic trending news, and I'm pretty sure you guys have already heard about this. I think it's been about a week since it happened, but Virginia Giuffre, who was the most notorious Jeffrey Epstein victim, a lot of news articles that you might be seeing are calling her like his biggest accuser, and I always pay attention to language. She wasn't just an accuser, she was a victim, and it's interesting that they don't lead with that in the headlines. But anyway, she died by suicide last week, and a lot of people, it's making huge waves, and we're going to kind of talk about everything that people are saying in relation to it. But for people who might not know about the Epstein case like as intensely as I do, late at night looking up everything about it, if you've ever seen that picture of Prince Andrew with a young girl who I believe was 17 at the age and like a cute pink tank top and like sparkly pants, and Ghislaine Maxwell is behind them. That girl in the photo is Virginia Giuffre. And by the way, despite having the photo, Prince Andrew was like, it was photoshopped, blah, blah, blah. Burn in hell. Anyway, the news is that she died by suicide at her home in Australia where she lives. And that's what the authorities say. That is what a member of the family has said, but we are now a few days after this, and different members of her family are saying different things. So her dad, Sky Roberts, he is calling for an investigation from authorities. So he's citing like past social media posts from her that we're going to talk about, where she said that she had no suicidal ideations and that the police should look further into the matter. For what it's worth, before I get into this episode, when I first saw the news article, I thought, sad but true. I think that this happened because, as we'll talk about later in this episode, over on Patreon, we did a little bit of a update on Virginia a couple weeks ago because there was something that happened to her, a bus crash, maybe. And it seemed like she was just kind of doing mentally unwell, which of course, like how could you be if this is something that happened to you in your childhood, your teenage years? And then it also came out that she had been going through some sort of custody battle, trying to get a hold of her children, and her ex-husband had been abusive to her. So it seemed like she wasn't in a good spot. But now, after having done some more research about this, I just don't know if things are adding up, basically. So let's get into it. And I do want to say, by the way, she is now the third person to die by suicide who is related to this case. Obviously, we have Jeffrey Epstein himself, who committed suicide. Did he? Anyway, Jean-Luc Brunel, if that's how you say it, he's this French asshole. He's a modeling agent. He was really close to Jeffrey Epstein. He was also a sexual abuser, and he committed suicide when he was waiting trial for charges of rape and sexual assault. And now we have Virginia Giuffre. So it's just interesting that she's now the third person. Now, it's not only her father who is a little bit suspicious about this, I don't know what you would call it, reporting of basically saying that she died by suicide. Her lawyer as well also has, quote, big question marks about this. Here's what her lawyer said about it. Quote, when I got the phone call, I was like, are you joking? Because there's no sign that that was something that she was considering. She argued that while Virginia was, quote, in a lot of pain in the recent stages of her life, that she had been, quote, looking forward to things in the future. And she said, quote, there's suicide and then there's misadventure. So what does her quote mean, right? What type of pain was Virginia in beforehand? This is something that we talked about on the Patreon a couple weeks ago. But earlier this month, allegedly, Virginia Giuffre said that she only had days to live after she was hit by a bus and she was involved in a car accident. So people found out about this when she shared this really intense hospital selfie on Instagram and said that like this was kind of the worst start to a new year. And the selfie itself, I'll put up a picture of this if anyone's watching via clips or over on YouTube, but it was really, her face and her neck was kind of all battered and bruised, and it looked like she was wearing, I don't know, some sort of hospital gown, but then people were saying it's weird because she had on personal items and jewelry, and normally if you're in a hospital, they take all of that off of you. Anyway, and she was on what looked like a hospital bed, but there were just weird things about the selfie. Like she had those different EKG pads on, but it looked like they weren't hooked up to anything, and I believe you need to have jewelry off if those pads are going to be on you. So it was just a selfie that A, was hard to see, B, made a few people have some questions, and then C, had a really interesting Instagram caption associated with it. So she said in this post that she didn't want to bore anyone with the details, but quote, When a school bus driver comes at you driving 110 kilometers as we were slowing down for a turn, that no matter what your car is made of, it might as well be a tin can. I've gone into kidney renal failure. They've given me 4 days to live, transferring me to a specialist hospital in urology. I'm ready to go, just not until I see my babies one last time. But you know what they say about wishes? Shit in one hand and wish in the other, and I guarantee it's still going to be shit at the end of the day. Thank you all for being wonderful people, blah, blah, blah. God bless you. Now, a lot of people just kind of immediately felt something off kilter when this happened. Like I said, right, they were saying, is the bruising makeup? Why does she have jewelry on? Like, I've been a medic for 40 years and this kind of seems like a BS story. And some people were viewing it in like a negative way, like, oh, she's just trying to get attention. And then some people were like, maybe just something is like mentally not okay with her right now. Now, at the time when I recorded this for Patreon, Western Australia Police and Ambulance Services, they told the BBC that they didn't have records of an accident happening in those weeks. Now, the police later said that they did in fact have a record of this minor crash between a bus. And when I say bus, by the way, it was like a school bus with children on it. And they were like, well, we did get one minor crash between a bus and a car, but there were no injuries. It seemed like a really minor thing. I don't think that would be what it is. Then a spokesperson for Virginia Giuffre admitted on Wednesday. This was weird when I said it on Patreon. Now that she's dead, it's even weirder. A spokesperson said that she had, quote, made a mistake and did not intend to publish the post publicly. That's just really weird, isn't it? Now, since I covered all of this on the Patreon episode, we do have more news about this because the person who was driving the bus has come out and they have something to say. His name is Ross Munns, and he insisted that it was a completely minor collision. He said that the crash happened after he followed this slow-moving white car for 3 kilometers before deciding to overtake it when it went under 75 kilometers per hour, and it was safe for him to pass it. He said that it was a small white Toyota Highlander involved in the crash, and it was being driven by a 71-year-old elderly woman who he believed to be Virginia Giuffre's carer. He said that he had no recollection of Virginia even being in the Toyota, but a police report into the incident later stated that a woman aged 41 was a passenger, which would have been Virginia. This guy, Ross, he's been a bus driver for 16 years. He said that he beeped his horn, but he was unable to avoid clipping the car and damaging its taillight. He said it was a very minor collision. He immediately stopped and went to check on the car driver, who had also pulled over and was satisfied that she wasn't hurt. So him and this 71-year-old elderly woman, they swapped details, including phone numbers, and they were both able to drive away afterwards. But he decided to report the incident to the police anyway because he thought that the circumstances were, quote, a little bit sus. So he said that he wasn't under any obligation to report the crash because the law says that you should only report accidents if they cause over $2,000 in damages. And he was like, it was such a tiny little thing, it didn't even make sense for me to report it, but I did because I just felt kind of weird about it. So later, he telephoned the driver, this old woman, who I don't even know who she is, as a courtesy to say that he reported the accident, and she rang him back the next day and said there had been a passenger in the car who suffered a black eye, allegedly Virginia. And he said that he was completely shook. And then when he saw her post on Instagram, he was like, that's crazy. There was no way we were driving 110 kilometers. We weren't even going 75. Like that was the speed limit. And he says that, quote, it's just all been blown out of proportion and I know what happened. I didn't even see her in the car. He also says that the accident was caused by the carer, this elderly woman who was driving the car. And he said, quote, the driver basically pulled out in front of me. I made sure she was all right. And then I went and I did a police report. She was elderly and I asked if she was okay. And she said, yes, I'm okay. I asked if she lived here and she said, no, I'm a carer. And I told her she needs to put her indicator on when you have to turn, blah, blah, blah. Now, isn't that the fucking weirdest thing ever? Also, the idea of like, an elderly woman driving the car. Who was that person in the car with Virginia? And he says he didn't even see anyone else in the car. Maybe she was there and, I don't know, had her head down or, the other woman was in the way. But it's just giving fucking weird. And also, if Virginia was in this bus car crash that landed her in the hospital, right, with, all of the marks on her face and the Instagram post, the only on-record crash that they had was that one with the school bus and the old lady. But it seems like that is, in fact, the crash because the old lady called the bus driver and was like, hey, my friend in the car now has a black eye. Then he saw Virginia's post. The whole thing is really, really weird. Now, what else we found out that we were talking about over on Patreon was that, Virginia Giuffre was kind of going through a little bit of family conflict right now. So she's estranged from her husband, Robert. And apparently they've been involved in like a lot of different restraining orders and things like that. They separated. They had been married for 22 years. They no longer live in their $1.9 million mansion in Perth. And there's allegations that he has been violent to her, like very domestically violent. I believe she's come out and said that, and other members of her family have also backed that up. And then also that she has been unable to see her children. So 2 days before this, alleged car crash, Virginia had posted this picture of her children on a beach with this kind of like caption that was like a plea to see them. Quote, "My beautiful babies have no clue how much I love them, and they're being poisoned with lies." Now, when I first read this initially, I was like, I just feel like it's kind of unwell to post something like that online. Even if you're going through it, maybe it's just me personally. I don't like putting that stuff online. But I just thought at the time, considering everything that she's gone through with Jeffrey Epstein, having to dedicate her whole life to this cause, having an abusive partner, not being able to see her kids, I would also be unwell. Maybe I would be posting that on Instagram too. Now, for what it's worth, Aphrodite, our favorite celebrity psychic here on YouTube, he did a reading about this, and he was saying that he was getting the vibe, not that she was like offed by someone or that a hit was put on her, but it's almost the type of, essence of like somebody makes everything in your life horrible. So then that way it really deteriorates you mentally and you might be driven to do something. So if you want to check out his reading on YouTube, I just thought it was really interesting, and every reading he's ever done has come true. So anyway, so what is everybody saying about this story right now? Oddly enough, Stephen King has been chiming in. There's this guy on Twitter named Cat Turd, and I think he's like a little bit of a shit stirrer, or maybe I should say turd stirrer. Apparently he's like a troll, but he posted the picture of Virginia with Prince Andrew and Ghislaine Maxwell, and the caption was, "Hit by a bus last week, hospitalized in serious condition, then she recovers but commits suicide this week. Does anyone believe this bullshit?" And Stephen King retweeted that and said, "Hard to believe anyone believes your bullshit." Which, yeah, I know nothing about this guy. Maybe he's a complete menace on Twitter, but it's just interesting to see. Anytime a celebrity comes in and they tell people to not have a conspiracy about something related to Jeffrey Epstein, it just makes me go, you're guilty. And I know that's like a horrible form of logic, but what can I say? Like when it comes to this, I just kind of get a little bit suspicious of everyone. Now, some people on Reddit are saying that Virginia was already dead in the photo of her on the hospital bed that she posted after the car accident. I feel like that's insane. Maybe this is me not wanting to admit to the fact that maybe I saw a dead body, or we all did, but I just feel like that's insane and there's no way that that would be true. But some people online, right, they're spreading it around saying she's already been dead. They posted that photo to say that she only has 4 days left to live, and then her death could come out and they could make it seem like it was the car accident. If we are going to go down that conspiracy rabbit hole, I just don't think, like, you would have to be the stupidest, most backwards ass assassin to do something like that. Just take her out and say that it was suicide. Like, why would you have to fake a car accident and then prop her up like Weekend at Bernie's for a photo? Like, I've just been seeing that notion going around online, and I personally do not believe it. I feel like that's crazy. Some other things that people think. This was one quote. They said, here's what they did. She had some more info that she was trying to get out there for a long time. They got scared as she was getting close, and they orchestrated her car crash, but she survived, because a lot of people think that that initial car crash was meant to kill her. They lied to her in the hospital through fake doctors and told her some bullshit about kidney failure, leaving you with 4 days to live. They were hoping she wouldn't question it and wouldn't post about it online, but she did. They let the news die down after people thought it was odd, and then they waited until the world was distracted with the Pope's death, Trump's economic craziness, to kill her off. The hit was called yesterday. I personally don't believe that either, just because, at this point, then you have to have the old lady in on the grift trying to get hit by the car. It just doesn't make any sense. And then also you have to have fake doctors telling her something and then encouraging her to post something on Instagram, and then it leads to all of that. I just do not buy that whatsoever. And also, when you look at previous, potential assassinations that have happened, especially in the political world, you aren't using a school bus full of children to take someone out. It's going to be someone in a car that like hits you as you're crossing the street or as you're in your own car or the brakes don't work or something like that. You're not going to use a bus full of child witnesses seeing something traumatic and be like, let's take them out that way. Now, I will say, if anything happens to Virginia's lawyers in the next few months, I think that would be a sign that this was, in fact, a hit. But there are other things that kind of don't add up to it in my end because of that, because it's just like she already has given so much information to the courts, to lawyers, to different documentarians, like all of that is out. So if you wanted to quote unquote silence her about something, wouldn't the time have been a decade ago? Now, what is interesting is that someone on Reddit put together a little bit of a timeline. So back in 2019, Virginia Giuffre tweeted that she is not suicidal and to investigate anything that happens to her if that is what happens. So a lot of people are bringing up this old tweet, but it happened back in 2019. Like a lot can change in 6 years. However, the fact that she did tweet that in 2019 means that there was a perceived threat. And there was a reason why she tweeted about that, because at least back in 2019, she thought that maybe somebody would take out a hit on her. Okay. So maybe that didn't go away. Then we're in the year 2025. On April 25th, she was found dead. So we don't know who found her. We don't know when. We don't know how long she was there for. Then on April 25th, 18 minutes before the official news came out, there were different like Chan boards and forum boards that were talking about her death and the coroner's involvement and things like that. And then about 20 minutes later, it broke online. So some people were like, how did these random people know specifics before the police or major news outlets confirmed anything? So then, April 25th and 26th, the police quickly state that the death is not suspicious, and the family releases a statement framing it as a suicide due to trauma. Now, people were saying, why the rush to label it not suspicious, given her history and the recent chaos, and why did the family's statement align so quickly with the official narrative before there was even a full investigation done, right? Like, we haven't even had the coroner's confirmation on this. And so far, we still have no official confirmation on how she died, the method or the toxicology results. Now, what's interesting is that what family member released the public statement that her death is not suspicious and we pray for her and blah, blah, blah. Because we now know days later that her father is saying that her death is suspicious and he does want it looked into. So is the family member who released that public statement saying, nobody worry, this is totally normal, would that be her ex-husband, the abusive one? So I think there's kind of this new theory cropping up that maybe her ex-husband, was involved with this and wanted to take her fortune or wanted to keep her quiet about what she was doing. And I believe that she has a brother and a sister-in-law who are on record giving quotes saying that Virginia has said if she was ever involved with him again, she wouldn't survive it. Allegedly, she's leaving behind a $16 million fortune. Who is going to own it now? And then a lot of people are also saying, too, Ghislaine Maxwell is going back to court for appeal. So how is this going to kind of impact the case and everything that's going on? So I honestly have no idea, but I think what really kind of gave me the willies deep down was seeing that bus driver speak to, I forget who he was speaking to or what source it was, but when he was like, there's no way that me bumping that car would have caused Virginia to look that way in the photo. And I believe the bus driver for some reason, okay? I also don't know who the fuck was the old lady in the car, the 71-year-old, the elderly care. Who is that woman? Was Virginia actually in the car with her? It seems like even if Virginia was in the car with that elderly woman, the accident was so minor that it would not have caused all of that happened to her in the photo. So how did she get to a point where she was looking like that? And who was the family member that immediately said, oh my God, absolutely, this was a suicide. We feel so bad. She's gone through so much, especially when her dad now is saying, I think that this is really sketchy and we need to investigate it. So it's just, it's really interesting because when this news first came out, I was like, yeah, honestly, maybe I was thinking in the way that they wanted me to think, okay? Because I read it and I went, yeah, that thing happened to her with the bus accident. It seemed like she was kind of unwell. I could see it happening. And now as more and more comes out, it's starting to make me feel a little bit funny. Now, over on Patreon this week for Friday's episode, I've put together a little section because there's also an OpenAI whistleblower who died by suicide a couple of months ago. And a lot of people, including his parents, think that it's incredibly suspicious. The angle of the gunshot was like all the way up here. Like you would have to stretch your arm up and then point it down because it's going into his forehead at like a downward rate that they say is really rare. And then also, they were saying that GHB was found in his system. There's evidence of 2 different gunshots in his head, and that there's blood splatters and his knee was injured. So it looked like there was like some sort of struggle outside of his bathroom, and they're trying to say it was a suicide. Did I also say that there was GHB found in his system? It's the date rape drug. Anyway, so we're going to cover all of that on Patreon this Friday in the Trending Topics episode, but let me know what you think about all of this. I have no idea. I will say the one good theory that I found that kind of gave me a little bit of hope is somebody said, oh, I like the conspiracy that she's in witness protection and safe. It's probably not true, but it makes me feel better. That would make me feel better too. So let me know what you think about all of this because I can't lie. When I first saw the article came out, I was like, this is so sad, but I'm sure things like this happen. She's gone through so much in her life. And now the more I look into it and read what this bus driver says, I just feel really fucking weird. And who's the old lady, right? I don't know. For some reason, I get sinister vibes about the woman who is driving the car. So let me know what you think about this. And I will see you guys on Patreon on Friday. And I'll see everybody else on Monday for another episode of Fluently Forward. Bye, guys.